The Minecraft Legends reviews are officially in, and they are pretty fine actually. A 72 out of 100 average is pretty decent until you compare it to its namesake, which has a 93 out of 100 and has received universal acclaim, while its spin-off title barely has any fame. I think it's easy to see why. This is a solid game, but it is one filled with flaws, and so let's go through each of those doors and explain what it is that makes this game so wrong. Is it the microtransactions of the DLC, or is it something deeper that's much harder to see? Well, that's something I'm going to dive into and explore, but first we need to say the things that don't make Minecraft Legends poor. I think that it's very clear that this is a good game in lots of ways. I mean, even the most critical review will tell you that it's a solid game for the right player, and it really is. I think that this is a great introduction to real-time strategy for the sorts of players who would never get into one otherwise. It's called an action strategy, however, it realistically leans mostly into the strategy elements, and this is something that is great for new players, and the game overall is really great in the way it's themed, the way it ties into the Minecraft world without having to lean on it too heavily. There are friendly and familiar faces, aren't these guys so cute, but they're not the only thing that you can use to shoot, and I think that's really great. This game is using a nice cast of new characters, and the easiest way to prove that would be the piglins. So the Nether is the big bad place in this world. Everyone in there is really bad, but rather than just using existing Nether Minecraft mobs, they've designed piglins in so many fun ways. Piglins with bombs, piglins with swords and shields, and it leads to a really interesting, even the box art of the game. Look at this. It shows off how there really is an equal balance between good and bad, familiar and unfamiliar, to make something that isn't just a lazy spin-off cash grab, to make something that is a little bit deeper. But no matter how much you like the world, there are so many problems to unfold, and let's go into the biggest 5 for this video. I think the first one is very clear. It's the length. Something that is standard practice amongst many video games is to release copies of it early to news outlets or to reviewers so that they can give people a proper opinion on whether they should buy it when it comes out. This is something that is done, and this is why we have a review score for the game already, despite it being new, because people have been playing it in the background for a couple of weeks. In this case, the early access also applies to YouTubers, and so across the various people who have played this game, the average completion time seems to be somewhere in the 9 to 12 hour time span for your first playthrough of the game. Not the perfectly optimized playthrough. Your first time playing, you'll complete the game and have nothing left to do in about 10 hours or so, if you're me at least. And so 10 hours is probably on the shorter end of what is great for a campaign you're paying full price for, but I think actually is a really fine balance if a game has lots of other content for you to absorb. Maybe multiple playthroughs for lots of different fun things, or maybe there's all sorts of other single player content, but Minecraft Legends just has this campaign and then says, go play the multiplayer now. That's what the replayability is meant to be. But the multiplayer, unless you have 3 separate friends, is a very much one-note experience. You play with 3 strangers against 4 other strangers, and then you hope that everyone's competent enough to have a fun game, and if they are, you can do this endlessly, time and time again. However, because there is just one multiplayer mode, it's 4 versus 4, base versus base, and because there is no tracks, there's no records, there's no experience, there's nothing to be gained from winning outside of saying that was good and starting again, the multiplayer experience is very much one note, and in theory, the gap that even both of these game modes being one note could be filled by this third game mode option they have called the Lost Legends. However, they do say they're going to release something here every month, and for now, there is just one horde-based game mode that, again, you would complete once, and there's not a lot of reason to go back to. This means that Minecraft Legends has a playtime somewhere in the double digits, which is a lot of fun, and if you get really obsessive into it, it can be more, but for a game that is being released in the current year, people expect some infinite replayability loop if you want to go to it. You expect to be able to have a, decent story that tells itself, and, the storytelling is definitely another point here, but even if you think that the story is great, it does end eventually, and then you'll run out of experiences that you can really rate, and this is something that they're definitely going to fix with DLC. However, that kind of brings into the monetization of the game, and the fact that it is a full price game that does feel slightly too short, maybe even on purpose, but we'll have to dive into that after the second point, which is balance. For a multiplayer strategy game to work, you need to actually be using strategy, and so when there is an issue of unit balance, it's not an interesting back and forth of rock, paper, scissors. Instead, it becomes who can get to the best things the fastest and who can guarantee they can win using it. If the game balance isn't good, there's no reason to hop into a new match because you know it's going to be a lot like the last one, and right now, Minecraft Legends does have some pretty big issues, I'd say. These skeletons are incredibly powerful. They attack things from an incredible distance, which they can do by themselves. Unlike most mobs, which just sit around till you order them, skeletons are always attacking something, which is great by itself. This is a criticism of every other mob more than a praise of the skeletons, but a big enough skeleton army can take anything down before they even get to a distance where they can attack back. Also, the redstone launcher is pretty universally known as the major way you can end a game, because instead of having to deal with all the base walls that your opponent's actually creating, you can just attack right over them, and you make the issue, which should be you are on the attack, they're on the defense, into the exact reverse. If they want to survive, they need to take down your cannon, which means they need to attack the base where your cannon is, which is just outside theirs, and this is a little bit of a ridiculous issue. But let's go into an actual game of Legends with strangers now to show you why even bad balance is nothing compared to bad game design decisions on behalf of balance that are so much worse. So, as an example, finding a multiplayer game that isn't already in progress isn't an option, so sometimes you're just thrown into a game that's open if it hasn't disconnected you twice first. That's what happened while I tried to show you this. But the second and even worse thing is that while playing with absolute strangers you just joined in the game off by the way, you can destroy their structures if you want to. I can give the enemies a way into our base, which is terrible. I shouldn't be able to do that. I'm gonna repack this up in fact, because that's such a concerning thing in my opinion. But here's something even worse you can do. No matter where people are on the map, if they're attacking the enemy base, you can take all of their minions away from them. Isn't that crazy? What? Why do I have access to these guys? That's messed up that anyone can recall at any point in time. Minions, they did not spawn. I just joined into this game. I didn't summon these guys. Maybe I should have. But yeah, the fact that you can destroy bases and take minions from your friends means the worst you can do in this game is not nothing. You can do so much worse than nothing in this game. And I guess we're going to attack the birdie man over there. You can do so much worse than nothing in this game, and I don't know if you should be able to. It feels as though... it feels as though the minimum you should do is sit there and doing nothing. Oh, and it gets worse, by the way, because not only can I send in those same minions to die, not only can I lead opponents into the holes in my base that I've created, but also I have access to all of my team's resources. So if I spend all of my team's resources on gates, I'm really sorry to these guys. I need to prove that I can do it. See, I just built 2 gates somewhere where the gates will have no value, stealing my team's wood. I'm going to be a good guy and replenish that wood right now. But most people don't need to, because you wouldn't assume that all your resources are shared. In fact, having shared resources, already kind of dumb. What a weird balanced decision. Having one shared base is just about forgivable in my opinion, but everything else should be separate player units. I think you should have an option to pool things if you really want to, but the fact that you can be saving up desperately to buy an improvement hub and then someone else goes and spends it on some arrow towers because they don't realize that you're trying to save it is crazy. Because also, have I mentioned there's no chat where you could tell people like, oh yeah, please don't destroy our gate, that's not what we want. Isn't that crazy? Why did it let me just do that? I'm gonna put it back, don't worry, I'm gonna put it right back. Oh no, oh god, no, don't make me, okay, I've done it, I've saved the day. I think, okay, yeah, it's fine, it's fine. Yeah, we're all good. I have not ruined this team. I'm just, maybe I should have done this in a private game with strangers, without strangers, because I feel bad for these people. But if you're 7 years old, you don't know what feeling bad is yet, Morality is not a developed compass. Oh wow, you want to fight me inside my own base? That is very needlessly brave, friend. Anyway, this is not the only issue of the game, but it is one of the biggest ones. The game is not balanced, and also, even if it was balanced, the fact that you can mess with your teammates' balance means it's not a 4v4, it's a big collective of 4 people sharing one set of most things, and it's very wacky, very insane. Okay, I think I'm just about done accidentally sabotaging my team. Accidentally might be a strong word. But yeah, this game has balance issues, but those balance issues pale into the comparison to the fact that they never considered that people would play multiplayer with strangers, despite the fact that they only allow you to play multiplayer with strangers. It's a very confusing combination of things, and honestly, I don't understand it in the slightest. The thing I do understand though, I think they could adjust the damage or the cooldown or the radius, or there are lots of ways they could fix this in my opinion, but the redstone cannon is absolutely bonkers, and although in the single player that's balanced by having piglins immediately shoot their weapons at it, you can't really have anti-building defense as a player, and that is something that is a big problem. Maybe there needs to be better defenses against people putting their base outside of yours. These are issues I hope they can fix with patches. They have specifically mentioned they are going to be updating the game. They even mentioned the matchmaking issue, where right now, when you play 4v4, you can't play with 4 friends versus 4 friends. When you invite 4 people, it splits you evenly between the teams. They've mentioned they're going to be fixing things like that, so hopefully they have an eye to balance to make sure that there's always, one, like a balance between existing units, but also new things so that people feel like there are new strategies all the time, rather than one clear strategy emerging and ruining the point of an action strategy game. None of these balance concerns exist in single player, where having redstone cannons be OP is actually a good thing to learn. It's strategy, it's useful, but having super OP things that aren't immediately, patched, that aren't balanced in some way with some way to counteract it, leads to less strategy in multiplayer, and ultimately they might be able to create balancing patches, they might be able to work out a better way for this multiplayer to work, but at launch it seems as though they've made a game that is perfect for single player, that is designed with one person in mind, and then just said, oh, let's put 4 people on the same team and work out what that means later. That, to me, is just a really bad sign for an action strategy game. The point of action strategy should be the strategy. Speaking of the point of action strategy, no, seriously though, what is the point of this action strategy hybrid? It is a little bit like Dynasty Warriors, and I understand that might be what they're going for, and I do think that it's a great introduction to Minecraft because you've got a character on a horse, so it feels a little bit like you're playing the regular game, but all of the strategy elements are really hampered by this action they insist on throwing on things. Every time you want to send units somewhere, say to focus on some structure or group of enemies, you need to be within a certain distance of those mobs, and those mobs need to be within a certain distance of their target. That is ridiculous in my opinion. You are the commander of the battlefield. These are mobs that are listening to you, but they'll only do so if you get real close to them and whisper in their ears. That makes no sense to me. I think that there could be so much more fun micromanagement of strategy if you allow people to actually take charge and say, okay, these skeletons I'll send there, these zombies I'll send there, without having to physically walk over to the skeletons and send them somewhere, and walk over to the zombies and send them somewhere else. The game clearly has grand intentions because you can send just melee mobs somewhere or just ranged mobs somewhere, but once they've split up, you can't send commands to them at the same time. The action part of this game makes you the commander, and that's really fun, but as a commander, you can do basically nothing. Sure, your sword attack will hurt basic piglins, but any serious boss is not going to be harmed at all by your sword, and that's before we mention that every structure in the game is immune to it. You can only damage structures using the mobs that you summon, and this really sucks. It also sucks that you can only summon mobs while sitting like a goose on the spawner and doing it individually. Why not allow me to spawn lots of mobs if I have the resources? Why do we make this a big time challenge as well as a proximity challenge as well as a resource challenge? It just feels a little bit juvenile to me, and I get that this is, a beginner's RTS. In a lot of ways, that's great. It allows people who would never try a strategy game to get into it, but the strategy can only ever get so deep if you as a commander can't have upgrades. I mean, all of your mobs are always getting more powerful, and you'll be able to summon more of them, and you'll be able to summon better ones, and you'll have more resources, etc, etc, but you as the commander never get more damage, you just get weaker and weaker by comparison to everything around you, which really sucks in my opinion, because it feels like you should be leading the charge, not being the single weakest unit in your entire army. Blackbird Interactive, the people who actually developed the game, Mojang just published it, are made up of people who used to work for Relic Entertainment, I found out while researching on Wikipedia, and as it turns out, Relic Entertainment are the people who made the Dawn of War series, an amazing base building game where you also have commander style units who really changed the tide of battle. Wouldn't it be great if whichever fight you were involved in was changed by you being there? I think it would be, but instead we just have a situation where mobs are incredibly lazy unless they happen to be within a certain distance of you, which really is a big flaw in my opinion. Not as big of a flaw as the plot, of course. Obviously, Minecraft Legends is aimed at a younger audience. Even though the average Minecraft player is 24, Minecraft is always trying to court the younger demographics so that it can stay evergreen and have a new batch of players. This is understandable, and Minecraft Legends is catering to, at the very least, a general audience, trying to make sure that it can at least be played by younger players. However, the plot is very weak, even if you just think, wow, those are pretty colors, and my god, the Nether is pretty in some places. There are so many cutscenes, and they convey so little. The overarching plot of the game, you can skip ahead a minute if you want to miss this, but I promise you won't miss much, is just that there are some piglins that have invaded the overworld, and so you've got to kill those piglins and send them back to their portals. If you kill enough piglins of the same type, their big boss guy comes and attacks you, and if you kill him, then their big boss guy comes and attacks you, and if you kill him, the game is over. That is 100% of the plot. There are lots of tiny hints in there and lore building, which might be for future content maybe, and I really love the implication that, yeah, actually, this is how the pillagers started. They slowly appear throughout the campaign. There are all sorts of great touches where someone had a really great idea for it, but they never really went into the full depth of what could have been possible with Minecraft, but it's a spin-off. And I think that's a real shame that the story is paper thin at best, when they could have had a story that was absolutely legendary. Anyway, with that said, the final point here has to come down to DLC and monetization. So here's the weird thing, a lot of the issues I've mentioned here, balance, length, and even the plot can be fixed with additional content coming down the line, and we have got confirmation that they do intend to support this game after its release. There's even a section of the store called Lost Myths, which is clearly going to be DLC content. This is exactly what they did with Minecraft Dungeons, and so it's no surprise to anyone, but there's only one reason they wouldn't tell us about all of those things just yet, and that is because obviously it is paid DLC that is going to fill some of the gaps this original game has. I think that when you pay almost full price for a game, this costs more than Minecraft for God's sake, I think you are entitled to a game that is at least finished in its own right. And again, maybe 10 hours and a multiplayer that you can play over and over again is finished to most people's mind, but when you see the DLC for this game, I'm sure it will be much more amazing. I'm sure they'll add all sorts of fun additions to the campaign. Minecraft Dungeons got 6 times longer because of DLC, and I'm sure Minecraft Legends will have the same thing happen. However, should you have to pay to get lots of experiences that should be part of the base game? Generally speaking, players and the consumers will say no, which is why we're not hearing about those new things just yet. Instead, they'd rather have people review the game as is so they don't see the clear gaps in content that are later going to be emerged, and I do think it's a little bit cheeky to charge for a game nearly full price and then also have DLC that is going to come, and then also have microtransactions. That's right, Minecoins are in this game, and it's nice because they do transfer over from the main game, but it clearly tells you they have plans for monetization that are going to be pretty intense. I think if they were honest with people, just said, hey, here is the season pass that you can buy, here is, like an upfront, this is what the game will need, I think people would appreciate the base game more because they know that balance issues would be solved with new units. People would know that the short campaign was just a start, like it was in Minecraft Dungeons, but I also think they're probably being tactical by not releasing that so that people will look at the game as is and see it getting better, rather than assume the DLC is necessary. Personally, I think that second thing is pretty true. I think we are going to need some DLC to really round out the game. Before I could wholeheartedly recommend it to a non-Minecraft fan, I'd say they need to have more content, because right now you finish the campaign maybe a second time to get the achievements, and then you say, what do I do now? And it's a little bit disappointing that the answer is probably wait for some extra content to come, and that is potentially going to be every month, but we don't know in what form. That is a problem, and it's definitely one of the 5 big problems of Minecraft Legends. However, don't get me twisted here, I don't think Minecraft Legends is a bad game. I actually think that it's a little bit of a victim of its own expectations. When you make something with the Minecraft IP, the best-selling game of all time, it's always going to have troubles living up to it. I mean, I'm sure you've been in a situation where someone's just expected so much from you, and even though you delivered something that's perfectly fine, they go, well, yeah, this isn't as good as I wanted from you, and that's something about that hurts extra, and I imagine that's where Mojang feels about all the criticism. They made made a good game, it's just they didn't make a game as good as the one that shares a name, and that is a real disappointment for a lot of people. But I think that level of expectation could crush any game, Minecraft included. If that game released today, but it did it in the same way, people would be criticizing all the unfinished features and the lack of an endgame boss or any real content. People would have so many criticisms of Minecraft because ultimately that's the standard that it's compared to. You're comparing it to the amazing thing you know and love, and that creates a real problem that has meant that Mojang has made lots of games, but none of them have stood up to the same candle, because having a hit be so big is actually a struggle because you struggle to live up to it. A good example of this would be Rovio. They make Angry Birds. Do you know what else they make? They make Angry Birds, but also different. They made a spin-off game called Bad Piggies. It was really good actually, but it turned out it wasn't as successful because it didn't have that brand name recognition. They're worth literally hundreds of millions of dollars because of their one hit. Why would they start making risks that people aren't going to like as much as it? And so ultimately, that's where Minecraft Legends kind of falls. I don't think it's a bad game because even though I've seen lots of criticism, and I had my own fair share in this video, ultimately you have criticism of things that you want to be better, of things you think are good but just have flaws, and the things that are so terrible you don't want to experience or play or be around are the things you don't say bad things towards, you just kind of avoid. And that is a sign, I think, that Minecraft Legends might be doing well. If they're getting lots of criticism, they can fix that. They can make a much better game, but if people are just choosing not to purchase it, not to play it, not to watch it, not to have any interaction with it, that would be the most damning sign, and if I was Minecraft, those are the metrics I'd be using. I know that Minecraft Legends is a good game, but can it be a great one? And more importantly, can it do it fast enough? That's what we have to wait and see about. For now, I hope you all enjoyed. If you like Minecraft Legends content, make sure to subscribe. I do cover that as well as Minecraft Bedrock and updates on this channel, so if you want to hear about all that stuff and more, please do subscribe. But for now, thank you for watching, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.